In our first story, Behind Mansion Walls, a Wild West wrenching dynasty.
Pound for pound, the toughest guy I ever met in my life.
And the murder that brought it to its knees.
I mean, gosh, he could have bought me and sold me 1,000 times.
And later,
she managed to get her fist around his testicles, and she squeezed for all she was worth.
The scandal that rocked the British aristocracy to its foundations.
You can't accuse a lord of the realm of being a murderer.
I'm Christopher Mason. Some of the most intriguing whodunits have taken place behind mansion walls. Was it Colonel Mustard in the library with the candlestick? Or did the butler do it? These moneyed mysteries have baffled the best and brightest minds for years. But are we now getting closer to the truth?
Osage County, the heartland of Oklahoma's Great Plains.
As we entered the gate, we continued for 5.5 miles down the road to get to the ranch. I never realized there was a ranch this size.
The only thing bigger than the Cross Bell Ranch is the mystery that surrounds it. In 1970, this is the domain of 32-year-old E.C. Mullendore III.
E.C. Mullendore was the owner of the largest ranch at that time in Osage County.
And the largest bank balance. E.C.'s net worth is estimated at over $37 million. More than $230 million in today's money.
Hello. Yeah.
I mean, everything up there was nice. They liked to show it off.
Andy Surratt is a former Osage County veterinarian and friend of E.C.
I mean, gosh, he could have bought me and sold me 1,000 times, you know, but we become real close friends, I thought.
From his mansion at the center of the ranch, E.C. can look out on the 4 points of the compass and know that the horizon belongs to him. But on September 26, 1970, E.C.'s world suddenly closes in on him.
Been a shooting at the Mullendore Ranch.
And who's being shot?
E.C. Mullendore. I think he's dead.
I was called at about 4:30 or 5 a.m. on the morning of September the 27th by an attorney here in town, and they had requested my assistance to provide protection for Linda Mullendore and for her family. E.C. Mullendore had been shot the previous evening. We didn't know what we were getting into as we drove to the ranch.
So far, everything police know is based on the statement of the only eyewitness, E.C.'s personal bodyguard, Chub Anderson. He told this story.
They had just returned from on the ranch somewhere around 11 o'clock that night. E.C. went down in the basement and was eating some dinner which had been left over by one of the maids. And Chub was upstairs running bathwater. Heard a shot go off downstairs. He immediately ran downstairs. As he entered the room, he was accosted by 2 men in suits who shot him through his right rear shoulder, and then they ran up the stairs. Chub pursued them. He had a .25 automatic in his waistband. Discharged his firearm, shooting a number of shots at the sliding glass door and out the glass door. After discharging his firearm, Chub went back downstairs. Found E.C. shot between the eyes.
E.C. is dead when the ambulance arrives. But instead of leaving his body at the crime scene, medics take it to the hospital, compromising the evidence.
The
biggest mistake was removing that body. He was immediately cleaned up. He was immediately scrubbed.
Cleaning the body removes potential traces of the attacker's blood or gunpowder residue on EC's hands. But wounds on his skull suggest there was a struggle before EC died. So did he fight back? Did he shoot first? Police can't tell.
Once that body was removed, there was no way to reconstruct that crime scene at that time.
Sherman York was a former employee of the Crossbell Ranch.
I went out to Mullendore during the summer of '71, and my job was just to do maintenance for Miss Mullendore, whether it was getting out her trash, washing the windows, taking care of her dogs, just doing our jobs for her.
But Sherman never expected his duties at Crossbell Ranch would include cleaning up after a fatal shooting.
I heard that he had been shot through the windows at his house and everything, and they didn't know who it was. And I thought it was a tragic deal for him. And I drove up out there. I could see it was 4 to 5 bullet holes in the sliding glass doors. The gunshots were still there, the holes. And then when we opened up the door to clean it up, the floor was still kind of sticky. But I couldn't believe I'm out here cleaning up a place where someone has been shot, you know. But we got all that and put it in trash bags and cleaned up.
Law enforcement now has only the testimony of EC's bodyguard, Chub Anderson, to rely on. But is he telling the whole story?
Chub could play the part of anything. I mean, he's a good actor. Chub would come into the office with EC a lot. They'd run together a lot. I think it's just the fact that EC liked somebody with him, somebody to talk to, confide in, and Chub was that person.
Chub is a notorious ladies' man. Some say he has eyes for the boss's wife.
Chub had a way with the women. He had a cute way about him and a cute style and kind of an all-shucks type way with him. Never had any trouble finding women or picking women up.
But Chub is also every inch a man's man.
Probably pound for pound the toughest guy I ever met in my life. Loved to fight, loved to finish fights. EC had an awful big mouth for a little guy and could get things started, particularly after he had had a few drinks.
Let's see what you got.
And it would leave it up to Chub to finish. He was an absolute excellent shot with a rifle and with a pistol.
Some fine shooting, Chub.
Yeah, he was great. Fast, too. I don't know if he ever shot anybody, but I guess he would if he needed to.
Can I get you a drink? Oh, thank you.
It turns out that in the months leading up to the murder, EC had been doing business with some dangerous individuals. And if a fight started this time, it would take more than Chub's fists to finish it.
The problem is, E.C. Mullendore isn't alone in his dreams of building a vast empire, and he may have come up against a foe who feels no compunction to follow the code of the Wild West. Forget 10-gallon hats and cowboy boots. These gentlemen are all about custom suits and concrete shoes.
There had been all sorts of unsavory characters on the ranch. There had been, quote, members of the mafia or syndicate from Kansas City on the ranch, people with criminal histories. Everyone was packing guns.
EC has borrowed millions of dollars from what you might call alternative sources.
What can I do for you boys?
I ain't no pain, Mr. Mullendore. Barry.
Chubb was very upset about all of these mafia-type characters on the ranch.
I know. It's been a hell of a year with those cattle sales.
The Cross Bell Ranch may be worth a fortune, but it's also mortgaged to the hilt. EC owes his various creditors over $12 million.
I'll make the money as soon as I can. You will get your money. Believe me.
Did the mob get tired of waiting?
There were so many rumors flying around about these two men with suits on, led to a lot of speculation about a mafia hit.
If it was a professional job, why didn't they finish off Chubb, too?
It didn't make sense to me that if these were two hitmen, why they would leave him alive after just assassinating E.C. Mullendore. Didn't make sense.
A week after the murder, private investigator Gary Glanz is given access to the crime scene and runs some tests.
Went upstairs, turned the water on in the bathroom where Chubb allegedly heard the gunshots from. We discharged firearms in the basement with the water running. You couldn't hear gunshots coming from the basement with the water running. We turned the water off. You could only hear a faint pop, possibly like a book falling off of a shelf, but not like the discharge of a firearm.
Glenn shares his information with police, who have their own ideas about what really happened.
The theory by law enforcement was that E.C. had shot Chubb and that Chubb had taken the gun away from him and killed E.C. There was also some speculation that E.C. had committed suicide and that Chubb had covered it up.
Police hear that prior to his death, E.C.'s marriage was on the rocks, and he'd been drinking heavily.
Will you stay if I stop drinking?
I'd visited with E.C. probably 10 days before his death, and he had a lot of problems.
That's my last drink right there.
With the possibility of losing his family.
Come on, Linda. You can't leave me. Not now.
It's not just the drinking. It's the people you bring here. It's you.
Losing the ranch, probably.
I'm doing this for the children. Linda!
So was it murder or suicide? A professional hit, a crime of passion, or an inside job? To Gary Glanz, only one thing's certain. Chubb Anderson knows the truth.
Little did I know at that time that it was going to take 41 years to get the answer.
Fall of 1970 in Osage County, Oklahoma. E.C. Mullendore III, scion of the most powerful ranching family in the county, is shot dead in his mansion.
Gene.
It was all over. I mean, newspapers, TV, radio, everything, you know, because it was an empire.
There's been a shooting at the Mullendore Ranch.
The only witness is E.C.'s friend and bodyguard, Chubb Anderson, who says he was also shot by two unidentified attackers before he chased them away.
There was some speculation of the contract hit by the mafia.
But parts of Chubb's story don't add up. The police wonder whether rumors of marital breakdown could be linked to E.C.'s murder.
Linda Mullendore had recently moved to Tulsa to get off the ranch with her family and to get out of the chaos and the turmoil that was going on the ranch at that time.
That's my last drink right there.
In the lead up to his death, E.C. and his wife Linda are fighting, and their marriage is falling apart.
It's not just the drinking. It's the people you bring here. It's you.
Come on, Linda.
Linda says she wants a divorce and leaves E.C. alone in his mansion with only Chubb to keep him company. So why does Linda leave? Is it E.C.'s drinking? Is she having an affair? Or have EC's debts placed unwelcome limits on his wife's extravagant lifestyle?
Talk around Pawhuska at one time was that Linda would weekly fly down to Dallas to have her hair fixed or go down and buy a new dress or something.
Linda's favorite spot in Dallas is the posh department store Neiman Marcus. In one whirlwind visit, her purchases are said to include 13 pairs of shoes, a $5,000 mink coat, and a merry-go-round for the children. The final tally? More than $20,000 on the Mullendore account.
But by mid-1970, EC is finding cash like that hard to come by. He's $12 million in debt, and with a $15 million life insurance policy, he's worth more dead than alive. With debt collectors at the door and divorce on the horizon, EC enters his final hours.
The night of that shooting, Linda's attorneys had made arrangements with the Osage County Sheriff's Office to serve divorce papers on E.C. Mullendore.
And it's not just the sheriffs who are in on the plot.
Chubb had agreed to assist the Osage County Sheriff's Office in serving those papers.
What the hell are you doing? No, the cops. I don't care. Step on a Chubb. No.
Chubb pulled over per the agreement. E.C. became very irate with Chubb for pulling over.
Drive! Come on!
Chubb sort of unnerved at that point, wanting to get E.C. served, but still having a loyalty to his boss, floorboarded that Chevrolet Chevelle.
Chubb would step on it. Let's go!
They had a high-speed chase over the ranch. Chubb knew that ranch like the back of his hand. Needless to say, with all the dust and commotion, he outran that deputy sheriff. In fact, chuckled about it and laughed about it later, how he left that deputy, you know, in the dust.
According to one theory, EC is furious that Chubb conspired against him. And when they arrive back at the ranch, he lets Chubb know about it.
You betrayed me. You betrayed yourself when you got involved with those gangsters.
Police believe EC may have shot Chubb in anger, causing Chubb to retaliate. But Chubb says that's not the way it went down.
Chubb categorically from day one denied that EC shot him, and he took the gun away from him and shot him.
8 months after the shooting, private investigator Gary Glanz arranges to meet Chubb.
I was driving a black Ford Thunderbird with big whip antenna, and that car was wired for sound. We spent 2 hours him reminiscing about his relationship with E.C. Mullendore and the family.
I just want to know why everybody thinks I'm a guilty person.
How much he loved him.
But I liked him. I really lost one of the best friends I ever had.
What happened after E.C.'s death and how it affected him. And I was still of the theory that he had disarmed E.C. and in a fit of passion, shot and killed E.C.
I'll tell you one thing. Well, you're close from anybody's man.
He said, if I ever think I'm gonna die, I want you to get there quick, because I'm gonna tell you what happened.
After one further meeting, Glanz loses touch with Chubb, but continues to work for Linda Mullendore as she fights for E.C.'s life insurance. In November 1971, Linda finally gets her payout.
At that time, it was the largest amount of money ever paid in the history of U.S. insurance on an individual death.
Is that huge insurance payout why E.C. took a bullet? Folks have been killed for less. The only one who might know for sure is Chubb Anderson. And in 1972, he disappears. He's sighted in Kansas, then Mexico, then Montana, Finally, in 2006, kidney failure forces him back to society.
They had refused him dialysis because the name that he was using while in Montana, that guy had been dead for 25 or 30 years. And once they figured out who Chubb was and ran the computers, they saw that there was an outstanding warrant, and they transported him back to Kansas.
Chubb serves a year in prison on an unrelated drug charge. He's released in 2008.
And in September of 2008, my phone rang one day here at the office.
Chubb asks Gary Glanz to visit him at his apartment. It's been almost 40 years.
Certainly, we had both aged up, wrinkled up, and I'm looking at a former shell of a man that I knew 38 years ago, and I'm sure he was too.
Chubb knows he hasn't got long to live.
You ever gonna tell me what really happened?
Chubb began to confide in me about the shooting that night.
It's like you said, Gary.
Chubb admitted that he had lied to me originally on the night of the shooting, and he indicated that there was indeed a fight that night. A fight between EC and Chubb. It was a spontaneous fight.
You guys ain't even think you're doing that, Chubb. You betrayed me.
You betrayed yourself when you got involved with those gangsters.
It was a fit of rage. It was a fight of passion. It was a brutal fight. He described not being able to knock EC out. That he was hitting him and that he wouldn't stay down. Chubb made a decision that he was going to end it that night, and he ended it. He stated if he hadn't ended it, he knew he was going to be looking over his shoulder for the rest of his life.
But the biggest revelation is yet to come.
There was another man there.
What the sheriff and no one else knew, and what no one knew until Chubb told me, was that there was somebody else there the night of that shooting. They staged the crime scene. Chubb, he knew the only way his story would be believable was if he took a bullet.
Do it.
I asked Chubb during that conversation.
Chubb, you gotta tell me how it feels to know you're gonna take a bullet.
And he said, Gary said, it'll make your ass pucker.
In November 2010, just months after he confesses to Glanz, Chubb Anderson dies.
I think Chubb wanted to clear this thing up before he went to his maker. I'm satisfied that Chubb told me the truth. I'm also satisfied that we have passed all this information along to the appropriate authorities, and now the ball is in their court.
Chubb never confessed to law enforcement, which means, officially, the murder of E.C. Mullendore III remains unsolved. But there still may be one person who can end the mystery, the third man.
That's where the story is now, for that person to come forward and to clear this thing up and to bring closure for everyone.
Half a century ago, British society is fiercely divided along class lines.
There was no social mobility. You were either upper class or working class.
In London, the divisions are literally set in stone. Like a monopoly board, the city is separated into rich and poor. Take a ride to the blue end of town, and you'll find the old money set.
The best addresses in London: Belgravia, Kensington, the prime streets.
For a house on this part of the board, you could be looking at $150 million. Only the highest class of society lives here, in peace and tranquility. Until November 7th, 1974, when all that changes.
A bleeding woman runs in to the Plumber's Arm pub in Belgravia, screaming.
Somebody's just trying to kill me. He's in the house.
The desperate woman is none other than Lady Lucan, wife of the distinguished aristocrat Lord Lucan.
Call an ambulance.
It took a good hour before they discovered the body in the basement. That chain of events kicked off what has become the biggest murder mystery in this country.
The Lucans were long-standing, very historic aristocrats in London. Their house was a very beautiful 3- or 4-storey townhouse in Belgravia, which is a very wealthy part of London. Their lifestyle was enviable and luxurious and comfortable.
Journalist Robert Strange wrote a book about Lord Lucan and has researched his life of privilege.
He was probably born with the best silver spoon that you're ever going to have. It was a very privileged, comfortable lifestyle. And as a little boy, he had the best education. He went to E10, the best private school in Britain. He had everything that he wanted as a child, and that lifestyle continued when he became an adult.
Lord Lucan inhabited a rarefied world, far removed from the concerns of the common man. Not that he was likely to encounter the average man on the street. His lordship was not in the habit of walking anywhere.
Lord Lucan did not know how to buy a pint of milk. His life was a nice Mercedes car to the gambling club, followed by a gambling session that would go on until 4 or 5 in the morning. That was his day at the office.
Lord Lucan is a regular at London's most exclusive private casino, the Claremont Club.
Lord Lucan was a born gambler. He just had it in his blood and he loved it.
As a young man, a one-off win of over $300,000 in today's money earned him the nickname Lucky Lucan.
Yes! Look at that!
But sadly, since then, he's had trouble repeating such good fortune.
He was universally known as Lucky Lucan. The great irony is that that was probably the least appropriate title. Lucky Lucan was exceptionally unlucky.
Lord Lucan lost millions of pounds. He lost it at the gambling tables. He lost it day in, day out, week in, week out.
Rise.
The money he had, he couldn't have frittered away on his speedboats or fancy parties or holidays to the south of France. He lost it at the gambling tables. Slowly, without people knowing,
Sorry, Mr. Lucan.
he gambled away all of the family fortune, and that's when his marriage problems started.
Lady Lucan is fed up with her husband's gambling ways, and she's not afraid to cause a scene, even in front of the help.
How dare you! Get them to bed immediately!
To Lord Lucan, an outspoken wife is an assault on the natural order.
You're pathetic, you know that?
For heaven's sake.
It was very important that his wife was deferential and subservient to him. And one of the things that started to go wrong with their marriage was that Lady Lucan began to find her own voice and began to assert herself a little more, and that was something that he was never going to stand for.
Determined to make our children as mad and as miserable as you are.
The Lucans begin to fight bitterly, some say violently.
You'll never get the children, do you hear me? Never!
You're a monster!
In 1973, Lord Lucan moves out of the Belgravia mansion. He launches legal action to gain custody of their 3 children,
Smile, Veronica.
claiming his wife is mentally ill
For God's sake, would you please smile?
and therefore an unfit mother.
He had a child custody hearing in the divorce courts.
But Lady Lucan steals the show with testimony that will shock the court.
She suddenly told the court that he engaged in a number of questionable sexual practices. He ordered a rubber exercise suit, and each night she was made to put on this rubber exercise suit and jump up and down doing exercises at the end of the bed until she was hot and sweaty. And then he would allow her to take the suit off and take her into his bed.
The court is scandalized and grants Lady Lucan custody of their children. Lord Lucan has been betrayed and humiliated by his own wife. Worse still, he needs to sell the Belgravia mansion to pay off his debts, but his wife won't move out.
He was in deep financial trouble from his gambling. His wife had custody of his children.
If only Lady Lucan would disappear, Lord Lucan's problems would vanish too. And then, as if by magic,
blood everywhere, all over the walls.
He said there had been a fight, that someone had been trying to hurt his wife.
a seemingly random attack, and Lord Lucan's problems are solved.
Veronica!
Or are they?
Lady Lucan had accused him of being the attacker.
I didn't do anything.
We can't have a manhunt for a lord. It was dark. It was raining. It was a winter's night, November 1974.
Lucky Lord Lucan, distinguished aristocrat, is driving out of London to the southern town of Uckfield.
He fled to a place called Grant's Hill House, a country manor house that was owned by Ian Maxwell Scott, the money man in Lord Lucan's gambling set. He was in London that night. He wasn't at the house, but Susan Maxwell Scott was in.
He said there had been a fight, that someone had been trying to hurt his wife, and he had been involved in the fight trying to save her.
Lucan says he needs to write some letters to a close friend, explaining what happened.
Stay as long as you need.
He wrote 2 letters saying something horrendous had gone wrong that night. It wasn't my fault, but I know I'm going to be hung out to dry for this murder.
Lucan claims he was passing his Belgravia home when he saw an intruder inside with his wife. He ran in to help her, but the attacker escaped. Then, in the basement, he made a horrifying discovery.
Blood everywhere, all over the walls. A crime of passion, without doubt.
His children's nanny, dead and stuffed inside a sack. And his wife beaten within an inch of her life.
Veronica! Veronica!
But Lucan's nightmare was only just beginning.
You did this!
Lady Lucan had then turned on him and had accused him of being the attacker rather than her saviour.
I didn't do anything. What are you saying to me?
Fearing police would pin the murder on him, he flees. Finally, Lucan asks his friend to look after his children because he's just going to lie low for a while. Then, he gets back in the car and drives off into the night.
And as that car goes hurtling down those English country lanes, he escapes a scene quite unbecoming for the 7th Earl of Lucan. His children's nanny has been savagely murdered. His wife is bloodied and shaken, and his lordship is the prime suspect. It's certainly a good time to lie low. The question is, when will Lord Lucan resurface?
Back in London, police comb the crime scene and get a statement from Lady Lucan.
The first thing she said when she woke and was able to talk to anybody was, "Lord Lucan did this to me."
A nationwide search for the fugitive Earl of Lucan is launched. The old money set is scandalized.
No, you can't accuse a lord of the realm of being a murderer. We can't have a manhunt for a lord.
When police find Lucan's getaway car at the South England port of New Haven, the evidence left inside might make even the Queen wonder. Maybe lords can be murderers too.
They had found at the house that night what they believed to be the murder weapon, which was a length of lead piping, and it had tape wrapped around it to give a solid handle to hold onto. And in the boot of the car was a length of lead piping with tape wrapped around it to make a handle. And when they forensically tested those two pieces of piping, they found that they were from the same piece of pipe. The biggest single clue that they had that what Lady Lucan had told them was the truth, and that Lord Lucan was the killer.
But why would Lord Lucan kill the nanny? And where is he now? Did he escape across the Channel to France?
There was only one ferry that night, just before midnight, and I've spoken to the police officer who said I saw everyone go onto that ferry and no one matched the description of Lord Lucan. So how did he get out the country, or did he?
London, November 1974. Sandra Rivet, nanny to the house of Lucan, is brutally murdered. The lady of the house is also viciously beaten, but survives. Lord Lucan says he chased away the attacker, but then fled himself because he feared he'd be blamed for the crime. Sound familiar?
It was actually a plot straight out of the film The Fugitive. A man finds his wife being attacked, fights off the attacker, and then becomes accused of the crime himself.
The difference is that the accuser this time is the victim herself. Using Lady Lucan's statement, police construct their own version of what happened that night.
Lord Lucan set out that night with a clear plan to kill his wife. It was a very good plan, and he would have got away with it if it was not been for one unfortunate error. He knew that his wife, Lady Lucan, at 9 o'clock every night would let herself down into that basement area, would walk down those stairs and would make herself a hot drink before retiring for the night. As she stepped off that bottom step of the stairs, he was waiting.
Lord Lucan attacks in a blind frenzy of blows.
And he was covered in blood.
Lucan stuffs the body into a large U.S. mail sack, then heads upstairs to use the bathroom on the ground floor.
So he goes upstairs. To his horror, who does he meet? His wife.
John, what the hell are you doing here?
For me, that has always been the absolute essence of this astonishing murder story, this moment. Lord Lucan thinks I have just murdered my wife. I have put her upside down in a sack in the basement. And now, there she is, perfectly well, large as life. He flew at her and attacked her as well.
Unlike the nanny, Lady Lucan fights back.
She managed to get her fist around his testicles, and she squeezed to all she was worth. And the pain was such that Lord Lucan dropped the weapon he was carrying. And he just gave up.
It stopped him in his tracks. What had become a frenzied killing was suddenly stopped. He sat there going, what have I done? I've murdered the wrong person.
John, what the hell have you done?
I've killed the nanny.
Lady Lucan was very clever. She sympathised with him. She said,
It's all right. I can help you.
"You just have to help me because I'm really hurt." So Lord Lucan helped her to go up one more flight of stairs to her bedroom. And he laid her down on their marital bed, and he walked into their ensuite bathroom, and he was going to get a towel to try and staunch this flow of blood. Lady Lucan heard the taps being turned on, and she seized this opportunity.
Lady Lucan runs for her life, runs out into the street. He has to disappear.
Lord Lucan flees in a borrowed car.
He knew it was the perfect getaway vehicle. That's why he borrowed it.
He was going to use the car to dump his wife's body, but now he has to change plans. He drives to his gambling friend's mansion in Uckfield.
When he went inside, he entered into the world of protection from the establishment. By going there, he walks into a safety shield.
It's where Lord Lucan writes his letters to a friend, laying out his alibi. And it's the last place he's ever seen alive. Let the conspiracy theories begin.
I think someone else took his car to New Haven on the coast that night. Someone else abandoned it in the early hours of the morning as a nice little diversion that the police would eventually find.
Others doubt this, preferring a more romantic theory.
Lord Lucan did the honourable thing. He threw himself into the English Channel that night.
Yet more theories emerge.
One of his multi-millionaire friends had his own private plane. If I was a gambling man like Lord Lucan, I would bet on the private plane route to get out of the country.
But where did he go?
Ever since the night that Lucan disappeared, there have been sightings from every corner of the world, literally.
Lord Lucan has been spotted in India, Barbados, even New Zealand, where in 2007, he was found living in a car with a pet possum named Redfern. Sadly, they've all been hoaxes, which means that if he is still alive, the noble lord has a remarkable talent for staying hidden. So would the real Lord Lucan please stand up?
The latest evidence supports the theory that Lucan's billionaire gambling friends from the Claremont Club gave Lucky a new life in Africa. In 2012, the former assistant of the Claremont Club's founder came forward, claiming that in 1979, she'd been ordered to arrange for Lucan's children to fly to Africa, where they could be seen by their father.
I think that the whole cover-up worked perfectly. I think he was protected by the Claremont Club, and I think that he lived his days quite happily in a very obscure part of Africa. Proving it is a totally different thing. Maybe we'll get there one day.
Some believe the reason there have been no confirmed sightings of Lord Lucan since 1974 may be because he has altered his appearance.
We know that Lord Lucan had had reconstructive plastic surgery on his nose 6 years before the murder of Sandra Rivet. This was a powerboat accident. He was out, one of his very powerful, expensive powerboats in the English Channel. He hit a bit of debris, went crashing onto the steering wheel and ruptured his septum. Now, he was seen by a plastic surgeon.
That plastic surgeon was Dr. John Watson, whose daughter Carolyn Allen believes Lord Lucan could have made another visit to her father for surgery immediately after the murder.
people quite possible. If they had him as a surgeon once, if they needed extra things done or surgery done, they would go back to him as a surgeon.
And there's been evidence floated that Lucan could have gone back to that hospital. Now, could they have reconstructed his face and sent him off to a new life in Africa or Europe? It's possible. Could he have been hidden and covered in bandages for 4 or 5 weeks and lived in someone's outhouse in a country house somewhere down here near the south coast, undetected? It's possible.
At the time of the murder, Father told me that the police descended upon his practice at Harley Street and asked lots of questions, and it's due to medical ethics, he was not allowed to give any information at all.
And Dr. Watson maintains his strict silence on the subject until his death.
When I last saw him, which was at my mother's funeral, and I said, "Look, Daddy, did you operate on Lord Lucan after the murder?" And he just went, which is what he would do. Father had a sense of humor and he liked mystery, and he wasn't going to give an answer at all.
Like so many of the other tales that surround Lord Lucan's disappearance, for now, the cosmetic surgery theory remains just that, a theory.
This is a murder that still rates as one of the top unsolved murder mysteries in Britain, and some people say the world. It was a murder that shocked the British establishment. A young woman in her prime, of a low social class, she was a nanny and a cleaner, bludgeoned to death in the basement of a flat or house owned by one of the top families in the country, the Lucans. It caused at the time an earthquake that even today is still rumbling on, because Lord Lucan has never been found.
A UK gaming agency is now offering 20 to 1 on a bet that Lord Lucan will be brought to justice. At those odds, perhaps the born gambler known as Lucky Lucan might even be tempted to turn himself in. Lord Lucan gambled away his fortune and brought dishonor upon his family's noble name, while E.C. Mullendore tried to rule the Wild West, but it conquered him instead. What really happened to these men of great privilege? The clues are confounding, the truth elusive. And these moneyed mysteries may yet have one more twist in store. Till next we meet behind mansion walls, I'm Christopher Mason.